Is the president a white supremacist?
He is. He's also made that very clear.
He can't keep trying to stir this up, give aid and comfort, be embraced by the white supremacists, and then say, oh, but not me.
He is someone who empowers white supremacists and who condones their behavior.
They call anybody a racist when they run out of cards. I'm winning in the polls. They're desperate.
That was a debate this week. Let's talk about it on our roundtable, joined by Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey, also an ABC News contributor. Rahm Emanuel, an ABC News contributor, former mayor of Chicago, White House chief of staff under President Obama. Republican strategist, White House political affairs director under George W. Bush, Sarah Fagan, also an ABC News contributor. Patrick Gaspard, I think we have to hire you. You're the president of the Open Societies Foundation. You were also political director in the Obama White House. And Rahm, let me begin with you, and let me try to get to the question I was trying to get at with Senator Booker earlier. Are we in a new moment on the issue of guns, on the issue of violence, on the issue of domestic terror, or are we going to see the same ritual again as we've seen before? Spike in interest, it recedes.
I think we are in a new moment, going back to also the Brady bill and the assault weapon ban that we passed in the 90s as a point person for President Clinton. One is I would suggest focus on the people that use it, not just the weapons. That was key to both passing the Brady bill and assault weapon ban. Two, I don't think Democrats should be so quick to go right to background checks and red flag. I would put an assault weapon ban clearly on the table, and I'd also be demanding also of
before background checks.
As part of the whole package. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There hasn't been gun legislation since Bill Clinton in '94 passed the assault weapon ban as part of the crime bill. And so I think this is an important moment. They're trying to narrow the debate. The last thing you should do right now is change it. And I think President Trump was very revealing when he said the NRA is weak. This is the opportunity. Now, the question is, does he, as he has said before, want to focus on the suburban vote? And I think this is the opportunity. He has to make a decision. This goes to one person because he can give every Republican the cover. This is not a Democratic problem. This is a gun control's a problem in the Republican side, and he can give cover to that vote.
And then Sarah, because doesn't the president have to choose here? He said, on the one hand, the NRA is weak. On the other hand, he wants to work with them. Doesn't he have to choose between the NRA and getting something done?
I don't think he has to choose that. I think what he's got to decide, George, and I think he has decided, that he wants to see expanded background checks. The real question is going to be, Rahm is expert at legislative negotiation, but in the end, Democrats have to decide whether they're going to be willing to take a deal.
Right.
And because I think there's a deal to be made on red flag and on expanded background checks. And I think the president has made that really clear. And I think he will do it. I believe he would be willing to make that deal. Now, are Democrats going to be willing to give him that win? You hear all the time Democrats saying they don't want to make a deal with the president because they don't want to give him a win. Well, if you really care about this issue, then take what you get now.
But a real background check bill, Sarah Fagan, is opposed by the NRA as recently as Friday night. Again, are you saying, I heard you saying right to Chris Christie, you think Mitch McConnell, Republican majority in the Senate, is ready to forsake the NRA?
I think that there is an increasing will among Republicans to do something, including many gun owners in America. The question is what and how it's put together and how background checks go, and can family members pass guns down from generation to generation, and all these questions need to be ironed out. As it relates to Democrats, Rahm brings up the assault weapons ban, which I don't think there's will to get done in the U.S. Senate. But what we hear on the campaign trail is Beto O'Rourke saying he's for mandatory buyback programs. That's another word for confiscation. Democrats on the trail are going to go too far and potentially risk an opportunity to do something on this issue.
What does it mean to go too far here, Sarah? I think that Rahm is spot on.
Confiscation is way too far.
But Rahm is spot on about the assault weapons ban. Let's look at the stats that we've seen through this whole week. In the years from 1949 to the assault weapons ban being passed in 1994, there were 10 mass shootings in America. In the 10 years when it was active, there were 2 mass shootings. In the years since Republicans did not allow it to continue, there have been 29 mass shootings in this country. Right now, today, there are 400 million guns that are in the hands of civilians in the United States of America. So I think that the question of universal background checks is probably low-hanging fruit now when they're at 90% support in this country. And
Governor, incredible progress.
It hasn't been low-hanging fruit before, though. So Patrick, listen, I worked with the Democratic legislature. Wait a second. I worked for the Democratic. You got your thing in there. Let's go. We move it around here, baby. 8 years I worked for the Democratic legislature, and every time in a Democratic state, I had to decide Was I going to take a deal that was there and that would move the ball down the field, or was I not? Democrats don't want to do that. Then they're going to leave universal background checks on the table.
Patrick said I was right, so let him finish. Go ahead,
well, treat this like the Iowa State Fair, Governor. Bring it back over here. Let's remember that when Rahm and Democrats and some Republicans passed the ban in 1994, it had 77% support in America, and yet it still took the active lobbying of former presidents Ford, Carter, Reagan, all coming together with President Clinton to get this darn thing done. I think that President Trump is inconsistent at best and actually schizophrenic on policy. We don't know what he'll say tomorrow, and I think that Democrats are right to continue to press the case on assault weapons ban and to force the president to be as
Well, let me push
as
this back to
possible
Rahm, though, and press the question that Chris is asking. If the president is for a real background check bill, I think that's an open question right now.
Sure.
If he's for a real background check bill and a real red flag bill, should the Democrats take that deal?
Yeah, first of all, I think right now, it's way too quick to say that. And there's a mismatch. Let's be honest what we're talking about. There's the policy that Patrick talked about, which is the assault ban worked. It expired in 2005 under George Bush, and there was no real push to keep it going.
Some question about definitions.
Just finish. Second is what is doable in the legislative branch. Part of being a leadership is matching policy and politics together. Does it mean that you narrow down this quickly? I would not. And I would also add to the issue, it's very clear that there's a lot of holes as it relates to domestic violence abuse and relationship to guns. And before we go to background checks, which have a lot of details, red flags, I would say there are two other issues that should be part of this discussion, and we're not going to let the discussion not only from the policy standpoint be narrowed, but from the politics. That is, there's a lot of issues that Republicans, they just want to get this issue as quickly as possible off the table. My view is this is a moment to fundamentally change the safety of the American people.
I agree. This is a moment. And either you're going to take a deal or you're not going to take a deal. And you got to,
that also applies, Chris, that also applies both ways. You're either going to take and make progress or you're not.
Well, that's right. And if the president is ready to make progress on things like background checks and red flag laws, if Democrats want to put politics ahead of policy, they want to put politics ahead of policy, they want to take the deal.
But here's the thing. We can talk about an assault weapons ban or banning certain types of guns.
We can.
This is such a multifaceted problem, though, and it is important to note this because part of the reason for the rise of these incidents is the feedback loop that is being created on the internet, where people who are vulnerable go online, feel validated. This has to be solved through technology. There's mental health issues that need to be addressed. And yes, there are some things that need to be done relative to access to guns by mentally unstable people.
What you didn't mention there is also the rhetoric inspired from the top on this as well.
And I think that's fair.
And the research shows there's no real causal relationship between the mental health issues and these mass.
Oh, that's not true.
But the rhetoric from the top matters here. And a president of the United States has to understand that a moment like this is not an I moment in history, it's a we moment in history. And instead, we have a president who's creating photo ops, who's holding a baby, who's the survivor of a shooting, giving a thumbs up, who's attacking Democrats and politicizing this moment through the lens of an election. We don't have leadership right now.
If we want to talk about politicizing this moment,
Governor,
Beto O'Rourke, Beto O'Rourke in the last week, Patrick, has politicized this moment in an attempt
Beto O'Rourke is not the president of the United States.
I sat and listened to you,
Beto O'Rourke is not president of the United States.
Beto O'Rourke wants to be president of the United States.
This is a moment of crisis.
And the media is giving him time to do this, and he has politicized this moment in a way. What he should be doing is being a lot more thoughtful, like we just heard Senator Booker do. Now,
Governor,
I don't always agree with everything that Senator Booker does, but he's thoughtful on this issue.
But I can, some of us are old enough to remember that when we had a president of the United States named Barack Obama, and he dared to put his feet up on the resolute desk in the Oval Office, conservatives and Republican leaders lost their hair and said that he was debasing the office. Now we have a president who in this moment has retweeted white supremacists, who has expressed sympathy for those who are espousing violent hatred in this country, and who has been inconsistent on leading on this legislation. We have to focus there, Governor.
Patrick is 100% right. A president of the United States has a responsibility with the office that comes in. Once you win that office and seek it, you have a responsibility to lead this country at every moment, from the Challenger, 9/11, Oklahoma, to the Baptist Church in Charleston, to speak to the better angel of this country, that out of many comes one. This president, who was at one time a symptom of a problem, is now the cause of the problem. And he has, in my view, it's an incredible time here. He has a chance to actually raise his and use the presidential, not only soapbox, but the voice and the moral voice. And he has abdicated the responsibilities because he is stirring and actually giving voice to the dark forces. He was once a symptom. He is now a cause of the problem.
But I agree the president should use different rhetoric often in these debates. George Bush was very, was the model for it, and President Clinton and others as well. But it's also important to note, you have a president calling for background checks, which is against where his party has been, which is against where other Republican presidents have been. That is real progress, and we have to give him credit.
We're talking about, okay, great. But there's a moral component to this. Here, I'll give you two juxtapositions, side by side on the camera. In Hong Kong, he is silent where he needs to raise his voice. Here at home, he is using a megaphone where he should be silent and hear what is happening to the anguish. This country used to assimilate people. Today, we alienate people. And that is a major crisis, and he has abdicated his responsibility that comes with being president.
And let's talk about how the president's responded to the crisis in the last week. The way he's responded to has been to visit El Paso, to visit Dayton, and to call against the wishes of the NRA, a Republican president has called for universal background checks and a red flag law. Now, that's leadership too, Rahm. And you can, listen, wait a second. You can say, and I have been critical, and I've been, Patrick, please. I've been critical of the president's rhetoric at times. As you know, sitting at this table. And I've been critical to him personally at times about his rhetoric. But this week, he has moved further than George W. Bush ever moved on this issue, than previous Republican presidents before George W. Bush ever moved on this issue. So if we're going to criticize the president at times, as we do at this table rightfully, then we need to give him credit this week for the fact that he's, in fact, trying to move the Republican Party in a different direction than it's been done before.
The president visited those communities and used the opportunity to attack and take on political opponents and to launch a campaign-style video about himself. Let's be honest about what happened. Now, on background checks, Governor, you're spot on that the president has indeed said this, but this is the same president who, an hour from now, is probably sending another Valentine to the dictator of North Korea. We don't know where he will be on this policy. Let's see whether or not he's prepared to use his. He has, and then faded quickly. Let's see if he'll use his political currency and stare down Wayne LaPierre.
It's a different moment now. And I think, and I can tell you that the president has decided that he wants to move in this direction, and against not only the NRA but also people like Senator Barrasso, who's come out and said he didn't want to do it. But the question's still going to come down to Democrats, George. Are they willing to make a deal with the president?
Should ask Mitch McConnell to bring the Senate back from recess to start moving on these bills.
President Trump looked like the soldier in Hanoi who was saying one thing and his eyes were blinking in Morse code, a total different thing. Does he deserve political credit for taking on an NRA and moving the ball? Yes. Check. Is there a moral component to the office of the president? Yes. Has he used that position? You can say in 9/11, they will hear our voice. In Oklahoma, we will be here as many tomorrows. In Charleston, South Carolina, amazing grace. Here, there is no rhetoric or line that speaks to what out of many is one. And we have Americans that are hurting, and he has not found that voice or spoken to that, and the better angels. And what he does is speak to the worst forces in the American creed right now.
I want to pick up on the point that Chris was making. Do you buy the idea, Sarah, that if the president cuts ties with the NRA, continues to push on the background checks, that Mitch McConnell, John Barrasso, 60 votes in the Senate will fall in line?
I think if the background check bill accounts for concerns that many who are pro-Second Amendment supporters are concerned about, you figure out how to pass guns from family and so forth, yes. Look, the thing about this president is he has a 95% approval rating among his base. If he is for it, his base is likely to follow. And the NRA will have...
That's why it's such an opportunity.
That's why it's an opportunity. And the NRA, you know, look, the NRA came out and supported bump stock legislation, which has passed. You know, they will move on issues when they understand.
It was actually executive action, wasn't it?
Yeah, excuse me. It was. You're right. It was executive action, but they supported it and they endorsed it. And you know, so he can also move the NRA if he chooses to.
Here's the thing: the stars have lined up. You have a weakened NRA. You have a president with incredible political support about Republicans. You don't have to worry about a Democratic vote.
Yeah.
The question is, will he use his political capital to move the Senate and Senate Republicans specifically on specific legislation. And
you don't have to worry about it.
Yes, you do. Of course you do.
No, the House has already passed.
The House already passed the background checks.
We'll update your political.
We're going to see what bill the Senate passes, and it's not going to be the identical bill. You're going to wind up being
only 8
Republicans. Hold on.
Sorry,
George, when we did the assault weapon ban, it passed in the House by 1 vote.
Yeah.
I remember all the phone calls all until 3 in the morning. I told President Clinton at 3 in the morning, people are sleeping. You can't call him. He kept calling. We passed it by 1 vote. What he decides will determine how many Republicans will go on it in the Senate. You don't have to worry about the House. You don't have to worry about the Democratic caucus. And I would not go immediately to background checks and red flags. Why should a domestic person with a history of domestic violence, and you know this as a governor, I know this as a mayor, and we know the correlation between domestic violence and what else happens.
Yep.
And there's a red flag when somebody does that. And my view is focus on the people that use a gun, which is how we did Brady Bill and assault weapon, not just the weapons themselves.
We're all rooting here for Sarah to be actually spot on and right.
George, we're going to stay here and argue for another hour.
We're out of time. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.